Okay, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a genuinely mind-bending paradigm shift in how we source the critical minerals that literally power our modern world. I mean, imagine a future where instead of massive industrial machines tearing up the earth, we're actually relying on the quiet, silent growth of leaves and fronds. Sounds crazy, right? But it's happening.
So, think about this for a second. Do you know what rare earth elements are powering the exact screen you're looking at right now? Because the smartphone in your hand, the laptop on your desk, and all those green energy techs like wind turbines and EV batteries, they absolutely depend on them. Elements like neodymium and cerium, they're basically the secret sauce of our high-tech lives. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. They're incredibly expensive, they're clustered in just a few parts of the world, and they are notoriously difficult to extract. We are facing a massive supply chain bottleneck, and honestly, the way we currently get these materials is taking a huge toll on the planet.
So here's our roadmap for this explainer. We'll start with the rare earth dilemma, look at nature's tiny miners, dive into the ocean with seaweed, the ocean sponge, explore unlocking the minerals, and finally wrap up with a restorative blue economy. Let's get right into it.
Part 1. The Rare Earth Dilemma. High demand, destructive supply.
Look, the demand for critical minerals to power things like AI, defense tech, and renewable energy is just absolutely skyrocketing. But as you can see here, there's a really stark contrast between our current extraction methods and what the future could look like. On one hand, traditional mining. This means stripping away soil, bringing in heavy machinery, using toxic chemical leaching. We're even looking at deploying deep-sea robots that scientists are warning will completely destroy fragile ocean ecosystems. But on the flip side, we have phytomining. This is the practice of growing specific plants or seaweed to naturally absorb these metals. It's wild because it actually restores ecosystems while producing usable biomass. It's just a totally different, much healthier way of interacting with the planet's resources.
Moving right along to Part 2, Nature's Tiny Miners, Terrestrial Extraction.
So what's really interesting is that nature has already evolved a pretty elegant solution to this whole extraction problem. Let's look at the definition of a hyperaccumulator, because these unique plants are the absolute foundation of agro-mining. Now, most plants will just die outright if the soil is packed with heavy metals, but a hyperaccumulator, it actually thrives in it. It drinks up these toxic elements right through its roots and concentrates them to just extreme levels inside its own tissues. They're essentially acting like biological vacuums for metals.
To see this actually working, we have to travel to China to look at this remarkable fern called Dicranopteris linearis. And I was honestly amazed to find out that this specific fern naturally pulls rare earth elements like lanthanum and cerium straight out of the dirt. In fact, it can accumulate 0.2 to 0.3% of rare earth metals in its fronds by dry weight, which is huge. But, how does it actually survive holding all that toxic metal without dying?
Well, it turns out the fern actually sacrifices specific parts of its leaves. It creates what researchers call a sacrificial waste zone. Basically, the cellular structure breaks down, and that accelerates evapotranspiration, which is just water evaporating from the leaf. This creates a sort of biological suction pump, and it passively pulls the toxic metals, along with stabilizing silicon, right into these dying areas. That completely protects the healthy cells of the plant. It's a brilliant survival mechanism, and one that we can now essentially harvest.
Okay, let's head to the water. Part 3. Seaweed, the ocean sponge.
Now, if land plants can do this in soil, what can marine plants do in the massive, mineral-rich waters of our oceans? This quote really hits the nail on the head. Seaweed is like the hemp of the ocean. It's incredibly resilient and grows rapidly almost everywhere. But here's the real secret to its hyperaccumulating power. Seaweed has negatively charged cell walls, and ocean water, it's literally swimming with positively charged mineral ions. So as the seaweed just sits there in the water, it acts as this massive natural magnet, or a sponge really, passively pulling those precious minerals right into its tissues.
To see this out in the field, researchers actually ventured out to Moira Bay beneath Bocan Mountain in Alaska. Now, this happens to be the site of a former uranium mine. They wanted to know exactly where the rare earth elements that were flushing into the watershed were hiding. So they went and collected seaweed right off the exposed rocks, rigorously tested the water at different depths, like 2 and 10 meters, and get this, they even separated the seaweed tissues. They tested the stems against the crab claw-like reproductive parts. It's incredible how targeted and specific this research is getting.
And because of research like that, we can actually map out these hyperaccumulators almost like a menu. Notice how specific natural biomasses act as magnets for completely different critical minerals. While that fern we talked about in China loves lanthanum and cerium, the leathery brown seaweed, fucus, found in Washington and Alaska, is phenomenal at absorbing nickel. And then there's ulva, or common sea lettuce, which researchers found is basically a superstar at concentrating a wide assortment of rare earth elements. You can literally tailor your crop to whatever specific mineral you need to mine. How cool is that?
Which brings us to part 4, unlocking the minerals, the extraction science.
Because, look, growing the seaweed is really only half the battle, right? We have to actually get the metals back out, and they are locked tight inside the plant's chemical bonds. But researchers at the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory came up with this exact recipe to unlock them. First, you harvest your mineral-rich seaweed and literally grind it down into a fine paste. Then you mix in a lixiviant, which is basically an acidic liquid used in standard ore mining, to drastically lower the pH. Finally, you hit it with high temperatures. This stress breaks the chemical bonds, causing the target minerals to just fall away from the plant matter. Their baseline goal here is to extract at least 50% of the critical minerals locked inside that biomass.
In tandem with that, scientists are also applying ion exchange technology. And this is a brilliant cross-application of a method that was previously used to clean up toxic forever chemicals from water. By running the seaweed solutions through a charged chemical separation system, they can actively isolate and pile up the rare earth ions from the biomass. It's highly cost-effective and, crucially, it completely avoids the toxic, heavy machinery footprint of traditional mining. A real game-changer for sure.
All right, finally, part 5, a restorative blue economy. This entire process fundamentally changes the nature of extraction through what researchers playfully call the whole buffalo concept. Basically, you use the whole shebang. Once you extract those precious rare earth metals using the acids and heat we just talked about, you don't just toss the seaweed away. No, the leftover, mineral-free biomass can be fed directly into a broader bioeconomy. We're talking biofuel feedstocks, bioplastics, or sustainable adhesives. And the absolute best part? Seaweed grows incredibly fast and it doesn't require a single drop of fresh water or fertilizer to produce. I absolutely love this quote from the advanced research projects agency Energy. They envision a future where mining actually cleans polluted seawater. Think about that. By scaling up seaweed farms to extract minerals, we're simultaneously pulling excess nutrients and heavy metals out of our coastal waters. It takes a historically toxic, destructive industry and completely flips the script, turning it into an environmentally restorative, genuinely hopeful practice. So I'll leave you with this provocative thought. As our demand for advanced tech, artificial intelligence, and green energy grows exponentially, we've spent so much time looking deeper into the Earth and further into space for the materials to build it all. But what if the ultimate solution is just quietly floating right off our coastlines, waiting for us to harvest it? Really makes you think. Anyway, thanks for joining me for this explainer today, and I'll see you next time as we continue to unpack the science shaping our world.